All right, here we are, guys. Welcome to the Flavor Expedition. I'm your co-host Dan Follacy, along with Chase Obachain. Hey, Chase, how you doing today?
Hello. I'm doing great. I'm very excited. We have our very first ever guest, and
What?
a guy that we've both known for quite some time. A very close friend. But I'll let you do the introduction. You started out. I'll leave it to you.
Well, we're not going to go through the bio and the resume because that's just way too long. And but we can tell you that he's larger than life, can lift 1,000 pounds over his head, and you certainly don't want to, cross him in a dark alley and piss him off. We've got the infamous, famous chef Christopher Tanner with us today. So, Chef Tanner,
Woo!
welcome.
It's funny to say that. Meet me in a dark alley. I'm the most passive person ever. Look, I'm 310 pounds, 6 foot, but I've never raised a finger or fisted anyone ever. So,
Well, you know,
Christian,
the irony.
Do that. So
Yeah, well, the irony to that is your incident in New Orleans last year, which it blows my mind. We're going to jump into something. We're going to try to follow our path of past, present, future. This is kind of past talk, but you got jumped in New Orleans, which isn't surprising.
Thanks for the PTSD. No.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, unfortunately, someone got from me behind, and just because you're large doesn't mean that someone's not going to try to take you down. And someone ran behind me, tried to grab my bag off my back, and they toppled over me, and I toppled into the ground. And you don't see there might be a red mark there still, but
there's a million people. There's a million people on that street in Bourbon Street, and they pick out the largest guy in the tire street. I know he looks like an easy target. Let's take him down. So yeah, a little bit.
And
of
starting on a wild note there, man.
I know.
We were
I'm
talking
crazy.
about food.
I'm
Holy
crazy.
moly.
We can
Good
talk
Lord.
about food too. Yeah, we do want to talk about food. So actually, what we want to talk about is really. First of all, thank you for being our first guest. I think it's really important to set the
My
tone
honor.
of having you here and all the great things you've done outside of your current organization. Maybe why don't you just give us a quick moment of your bio, and then we'll go into really what it means to be a chef is what we're going to chat about today.
Gosh, yeah. So it's interesting to talk about my career because it's gotten into so many different angles, and I think that's what brought me to the ACF now. So my current role is Executive Director of Operations for the American Culinary Federation. I operate a team of about 20 individuals that run the national office for the American Culinary Federation. We have about 16 of us in the national office, and four of my team are remote. We do everything from certification to accreditation, culinary competitions. We run an annual conference. This year will be in Phoenix, Arizona. We have Mastercraft Summits. We are the sponsors for Team USA, who are on their way, or actually out in Germany right now, getting ready for the Culinary Olympics. But my path to leading up to here, I'm from Schenectady, New York originally, graduate from Schenectady County Community College. They were an ACF accredited school, so that was one of my first forays into the ACF. I was on a local competition team for the school, and I won. I was awarded student culinarian of the year on the American Culinary Federation when I was a student there, and just fell in love with the organization and just continued it through my career. I worked in restaurants for a number of years, staged at Bayona in New Orleans. There's New Orleans again.
Yeah.
And also worked my way through for Disney, worked at Flying Fish Cafe at Disney and restaurants across the entire country. I was a chef at Tenai Lodge out in Yosemite, executive sous chef. Worked in Vermont, went to California Sushi Academy during that time. And I just kind of wanted to find some direction in my career eventually. So I ended up going to, and Chase will know this, some of you know that SUNY Delhi in New York, you may or may not know, is a school up there that competes as well. So I ended up going there. I met Tom Rassanella, who's another ACF judge who was a mentor to me, and started doing a culinary competition. So here we go again. I get back into ACF again. I started competing as a professional at that point because I was 27 at that time when I went to SUNY Delhi. Took me 3 years to do that degree. The reason was, one, I ran a country club during the summers, the Winnesip Club, but also, and we'll talk about this, I think, a little bit of education, but my culinary degree was an occupational studies degree. So I didn't do any of the gen ed requirements when I did my culinary degree. And I really think that helped propel me a little bit further, not having to do a lot of that. But when I decided to finally do my bachelor's degree, when I did my gen ed studies. finished up there, went to Boston. I happened to do a culinary competition at Boston University that was out there, and I found I didn't want to get an MBA. It just seemed like that was the what everyone else did. And when I went to Boston University, they had this gastronomy and food studies degree that was there. So I knew with the associate's degree, I learned how to cook. The bachelor's degree taught me how to make money, how to cook. I wanted to understand why we eat what we eat and understand trends and all those sort of things. So that's how I ended up at Boston University. Julia Child and Jacques Pepin were the creators of that program there.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Pretty notable people.
So Jacques Pepin came up with it. He was looking for a way for chefs to get a master's degree. So he got his master's degree from Columbia University in New York and said, not everyone should do that. We should do something that's more. So it's more of a liberal arts approach to food. So all the different aspects, history, sociology, business in there as well. I did all my classes in 2 semesters. Anything about Boston University, it's not cheap. And it was at the time, we're talking 15 years ago, 16 years ago, it was $25,000 a semester then. So I wasn't paying more than $50,000 for college. So did in 2 semesters. And I got done, and it took me. So then I went to, I planned on taking a semester off and teaching, not taking a semester off, but taking a semester teaching as an adjunct at Schenectady County Community College, where I graduated from. 4 years later, I was married. I became an ACF competition judge. I'd finished my certification for a certified executive chef right when I started there. Had a competition team myself that I was coaching there. Had a student win Northeast Region Student Chef of the Year, and any number of other accolades that were there. And I finally finished my thesis after 4.5 years. My wife pushed me to do it, and I wrote a project on creating a retail environment for garde manger curriculum, because I thought it was important for the students not just to learn how to make 2 pounds of sausage, how to make 50 pounds of sausage, and also show what different outlets. Went from there, went to leadership roles, ended up becoming the dean for the culinary program for Montgomery Community College. And then I took a left turn at Albuquerque. A friend of mine was a certified master chef. Tom Griffiths was a CMC at VP of Culinary for Campbell Soup Company, and asked me if I was interested in a job. I'm like, not really, but I'll come talk to you. And 4.5 years later, I oversaw the Americas division for Campbell's. So Pace, Prego, Swanson, Plum Baby Food. And that's where Chase and I met when I was up at Pepperidge Farm. I got promoted to a global position of global biscuits and snacks. So oversaw culinary for Pepperidge Farm up in Connecticut, and restructuring my position along with a number of other chefs' positions were eliminated, and I went back to education for a little bit. So I went and closed Columbus Culinary Institute.
You and me both, Chef. You and me both.
I closed Columbus Culinary Institute, unfortunately, and then went back to corporate again and ended up at Griffith Foods 2 years before moving down here to Jacksonville, Florida. I was head of culinary and supported sales, marketing as well down here at Rubik's Foods. And about 5 months ago, we had a whole big changeover of the ACF, and a couple of people were eliminated from positions, including our executive director, our CFO, and some changes, and a new board came in, and they asked me if I was interested in interviewing. And again, I said, I'm comfortable in my position, but I then realized 90% of my career came from the ACF. So, and here I am now. I interviewed, and we're leading forward. So.
Woo, take a breath. Wow.
Yeah.
I think there's a new rule. New rule is going to have to go in place. We're going to have to 1 minute or less to introduce yourself. That's incredible.
Yeah,
what a storied background. And I think it's really important people understand that, everyone's culinary path is completely different. And
that's why I purposely talked about that, because I've touched all aspects of the industry, and I think it's important for people to realize that our paths are not all the same. So
Absolutely. No, that's such a good point, is the fact that there's a million different places you can go in the culinary field, and there's a million different ways you can take to end up at very similar paths.
Yeah.
So no, I think that's a really great point.
Or at some point you cross over and touch. And there's some things I think, quite honestly, I believe that a lot of culinarians never get the opportunity to try some of the things you spoke about, is simply because they weren't told about it.
Yeah.
They made aware of it. So, it's like corporate food manufacturing. That was never, ever discussed. And I went to Johnson & Wales. Now they've got an entire lab and whole food science hybrid, program built around it.
Yeah.
wasn't even a thought when I attended culinary school.
Yeah, they never talked about that. Well, obviously with me either. And when Tom asked me if I was interested, I'm like, I don't even know what any of this stuff is. But it made me realize that having chefs in the kitchen changes the dynamic of the food that we've been looking at for years. So if you don't have a chef looking at it, you're going to end up with a lot of the same food over and over again because it's easy for someone to put together. When chefs are involved, we push the button a little bit, and sometimes we don't know the process or don't care about the process, so we'll smash it a little bit and put it back together. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think it's really interesting to take a look at that and understand the past of where culinary was, where food was being manufactured, all the things that brought us to this point of a plethora of options, right? You've got of course we have a Scoffier that codified recipes and put things together. We have food safety with guys like Louis Pasteur, who helped extend shelf life of things. And I think there's a lot of culinarians, even to this day, who really don't put a lot of thought behind all of those different exposures that you had, because they just go to their local Cisco website and hit click and the food shows up.
But Dan, one of the things that people don't realize is Scoffier helped with the canning process. So during the war, Scoffier actually helped revolutionize the canning process. So, and I think if he was alive today, he would probably be revolutionizing sous vide cooking for the industry or any number of different things that we would be using that we take for granted now. I think he would be working with that stuff too. So.
Yeah. I think there's definitely something in there about all the great things that they've done in the past, all the things we've all done in the past to get us to where we are today. Maybe there's some things, as I know you're really focused on the ACF. I would love to hear if you could share some of the things that are going to be transitioned and maybe different about the ACF. I guess one of the things that come to my mind is, it was really kind of brought, to forefront the reason why the organization is at its prominence, because of the entire Department of Labor classification of chefs, right? That was a big thing to do. It was done a long time ago. Do you see if there's any new classifications that that would be something to push forward to with the Department of Labor, or is there a different way that the ACF is kind of approaching any of that subject?
Yeah, so obviously our vision or our tagline is the standard of excellence for chefs in the United States of America. I think more so is we were definitely thought of the standards of cooking, especially at one point, and that's something that we're working to get that message back to where it is. And we've emphasized most of our 95 years. This is our 95th year in existence. That about fine dining cooking for the most part. So as we know, as the economies change and different things change, our emphasis on different areas and what we were just talking about has redefined what a chef is. So is a chef just someone who works in fine dining? I would say that all three of us probably, when we went to culinary school, probably thought that that's what we wanted to do. It's also the area that pays the least in our industry, because you learn so much when part of it is you're doing it because you love it and you're passionate and you want to learn and you want to do that high end piece. But one of the emphasis that I'm personally looking, I know our board's looking at, is how do you become more inclusive about the rest of the industry. So we do have the Research Chef Association that was kind of actually a break off from us. And I'm working on building those relationships back. So I'm actually doing a presentation with Chef Walter Zaromsky, who's one of the founders for the RCA. He and I are doing a presentation at the upcoming conference there, and vice versa, having those relationships. So part of it is bring the relationship back with some of those organizations. Helps that I've been part of both organizations, and so has Walter, and so has many other people. But it's also looking at the what a definition of a chef is today too. Or even I would say a kitchen manager, or even a definition of culinary. The word chef, it means chief, who's someone who's in charge.
Yeah.
But just because someone doesn't run a fine dining restaurant doesn't make they're not a chef. So I'll just take us to food trucks for a second. So we have a food truck called VUCA Food Truck here. It's an Italian street food truck. They're both graduates from the Culinary School of America. Because they're running a food truck, does that mean they're not a chef? They're both CI grads and they're making amazing food out of there, right?
Yeah.
So, and then we just talked about Campbell's Soup Company, where Chase and I worked together. We had a certified master chef, one of the top people in the industry, creating food for canning and for packaged bread and packaged cookies. Because he's working there, does that make him less of a chef? No, that means they're taking that chef skill and turning it into a different way. But then even we talk about chain restaurants. So at the chain restaurants, so you look at like Applebee's or Fridays or some of those restaurants, at the top, they actually have a lot of chefs that are leading the research and design and the marketing for building those menus. But think about the people that are working in the actual locations. So just because someone's working as a culinary and kitchen manager of a local, I use Cracker Barrel for an example, doesn't mean they're any less of a culinarian. It's just a different style of culinarian. They still have to have management skills. They still have to have supervision skills. They still have to have sanitation skills, and they still need to know how to properly plate their food and put it out. It's just a different style of food. So at the ACF, what I'm trying to do is be more inclusive and bring those folks into our fold, and then also find opportunities to help them with their careers as well. They may not want to be, fine dining chefs, and they probably shouldn't be, because they're actually doing something different. They're standardizing. I can go to a chain restaurant here in Jacksonville, Florida, and go to the same chain restaurant over all the way in San Francisco, California, and have the exact same meal. A lot of fine dining chefs can't say that because they can only do it in the one location.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for us to embrace that as well, and that's one of the pieces of my mission, is to embrace that style of cooking as well.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because it is, chef gets thrown around so loosely, and it's more. I see it more as a way of paying respect than to others, and like we've talked about in the past. We're not in a kitchen on the line on a daily basis. Do we call ourselves chefs? I think have we've earned it over time, I guess, and we are certainly accustomed and familiar with food preparation and handling and all those ways. But I love that
Chris earlier,
a collaborative approach to it.
Chris, earlier, you said a great sort of just a kind of encompassing statement about it. In that when we said, we're talking about what does it mean to be a chef, you said that's a pretty blanket term there, right? And to your point, it's such an incredibly vague term. I mean, the amount of people who work in the food and beverage industry that are, very much cooks or that run their own kitchen that get kind of no respect for what they do are very much chefs. And there are people, for, just a bit of a kind of reference to what you said, who no longer cook, but have cooked their entire lives and know everything about cooking, that are referred to as chefs in their day to day. I mean, more often than not at Campbell's, I was probably sitting at a computer writing formulations and doing nutritional analysis, working on processing and so forth. And there were entire days where maybe I didn't even cook, but, we walked around and there was always a, hey, chef, how's it going? Do you think that there's something to be said about the kind of development of romanticism that is kind of painted onto chefs nowadays as kind of a title? I know, chefs came from what were originally, servants and servitude types of roles historically, and now it's looked at as something that's this really kind of larger than life atmospheric title.
Yeah, I think that was both a positive and negative to us when the Food Network kind of launched and propelled us forward as some people said, culinary rock stars. And you got the books like Anthony Bourdain had written, and it really brought a lot of attention to us. I think both positive and negative. So I think from a positive standpoint, it got more people to grow into our industry and want to do what we do for a living. But at the same time, I think it over elevated us. It gave us that ego a little bit. It turned us. I hate the term celebrity chef. What's a celebrity chef? I mean, at the end of the day, are you a chef or are you a celebrity? Because if you're saying you're a celebrity, it means you're probably not in the kitchen anymore influencing. That's okay. But at the end of the day, what I think is, if we refer to ourselves as hospitality or culinary industry professionals, I think that's a little bit different. And that's where I think of us as industry professionals rather than just saying that we're chefs. A chef is a leader. It's a French word, so it literally means chief. So in France, you have a chef de bibliothèque, which is the chief of the library. So, and that's why it's called a chef de cuisine in France. We changed the terminology here in the United States, and that's okay. It's just, again, we have to. I don't even have a kitchen in my office building. We literally have a kitchenette with a microwave, a toaster oven, and a dishwasher. So at least I know at some point I can go back to my career start and do dishes again.
Hey,
But at the same time, I think a culinary industry professional is really, that word professional, I think, is the most important part. And you'll hear, if you're around me anytime recently, I use the word personal excellence. Someone who works in personal excellence is someone who's an industry professional. I think it's important for us to recognize everyone in every aspect of what we do. Whether it's, and we have people that are professional prep cooks. That's okay. That's what they want to do for a living. But they're industry professionals, and we need to make sure we're recognizing that.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. There was also, I know back in my days in the kitchen, they were really given that recognition. It was kind of the dumped on position, and sometimes it was the dishwasher who was made or asked to fill in and prep and do all these other things. But it's those guys that said yes, chef.
Yeah.
And then they got elevated, and next thing you know, they're the ones owning the restaurant 20 years later. So it's interesting.
But I think it's having a basic understanding of cooking for all of what we've done in our corporate food lives. If we didn't have that basic understanding of proper cooking, then we couldn't have done a lot of what we've done. So, but again, I think the world's changing. The students that are coming out of culinary school today don't necessarily want to work in a fine dining restaurant to start, to understand that. And I don't think you need to. I don't even think you need to go into culinary school. And if we get to talk about apprenticeships at a certain point, I think that would be interesting to talk about where the industry can go. But also, working in culinary, food science is important. We don't learn about food science in culinary schools.
Mm-hmm.
We take a basic science class in culinary school. Doesn't prep us for what we're doing unless you happen to find, it's like Johnson & Wales at a Culinary Institute of America have their culinology programs, and some of the community colleges have them as well. They're accredited by the Research Chef Association. But it's the food science, I think, is important. I wish we can contextualize. I'm going to go off on a tangent. I wish we can contextualize culinary education, particularly in colleges, a little bit more. So colleges have gone away from getting people ready to go into the industry to work and gone to getting people ready to go get a bachelor's degree. And then a bachelor's degree is to go get someone ready to get a master's degree. It's a business. It's no longer about getting us ready. When 50% of your degree is gen ed studies and has nothing to do with your degree, it has nothing to do with getting you ready for your career. It has everything to do about filling the education gap. So that's just my personal opinion.
Well, and that kind of brings us to the future to some degree.
ACF's opinion. So
no. As that actually brings us to the present of lack of labor that's available. It seems, the lack of new students graduating, high school students wanting or not wanting to go to college, the rise of vocational education, everything's circling. It's all circumferential in that way, and I believe, I base this on past history of just my father's lack of formal education. He's a man who never finished high school, went to the military, did his thing, and then came out and got into the trade business of being an electrician and held his master's electric license for 30 some years. And man, we had a wonderful lifestyle as a kid. And I think there's opportunity. I just thought it was really interesting. You said, I don't think everyone needs to be in college, especially for culinary. And it makes you think, because these other business formats don't require that. And at the end of the day, we're a business. We're doing this not only because we love and we're passionate about cooking, as I really do love cooking. I have a blast when I'm preparing something and I create something for my family or for friends, and it's like, hey man, you got to try this. It's fucking killer. But that being said, do you need to spend 4 years, carry a whole bunch of student debt,
right?
And then go out in the world, try to get a job, and you're certainly not going to go in a white tablecloth restaurant. And then there's the whole, I have a culinary education and I shouldn't go work at McDonald's. Well, McDonald's is paying $20 an hour, and they got some of the finest
other places.
Yeah, they got some of the finest education, Hamburger U, and those annual unit volumes are multi-million dollars, and they're expanding with Cosmics and I think I saw another 500 units in the next 5 years with them.
think
So
business ownership, and that's business ownership. And again, when I was talking about culinary manager, the person who's managing a McDonald's is a culinary manager at the end of the day. They may not be cooking the food that we all started off with. So I think, in my opinion, there's two paths really for what we can do to grow our industry, or maintain or grow our industry. But also, you mentioned high school. There's a lot of high school vocational programs. So ACF, ProStart, the Skills USA all work toward building up the high school programs.
right.
I encourage more parents, if you're listening to this, encourage your students to, if they want to do it. The culinary path in vocational schools should not be, I don't think that Billy or Sally can do well in class, so let's put them in culinary. It should be one of those things that this is a trade, so don't think of it just as culinary arts. Think of it as a trade. This is a great trade for you to someday get into, that you'll be not only able to feed yourself at every day, but also be able to have a career at. And when you start at those, especially those accredited schools, they have accreditation by the ACF. There's a standard of excellence that's there that gets them ready for the industry. Now you have a path. If you want to go into to be a research chef, you have to go get a degree. So especially if you want to work for any of these companies, you need to go to college path and start finding the correct college path for it. But that's not for everybody.
Right.
Some people want to have a job. Some people want to have a career. In culinary, in the apprenticeship that we offer 6, 12, and 2-year apprenticeship model that through a large number, 400, large number of schools throughout the year, the country. But also that you could do online. This is something that we're just starting to build. In the past, it all had to be done through a school. Now we have an online learning center with the ACF where you can actually do your academic pieces all online for your apprenticeship. Again, you go through the 6-month, it's a certified fundamentals cook. You go through the 1 year, it's a certified culinarian, which, by the way, is the same certification you get out of 2 years of college. And then, or you can become a certified sous chef after you graduate from a 2-year apprenticeship model. So Westmoreland College in Pennsylvania is an example of that. Columbus State is another example in Columbus, Ohio. So you're going to differentiate yourself from everybody else in the industry, especially if you're going the culinary path, because everyone, it doesn't matter. I went to Schenectady County Community College. You've got here in Jacksonville, we have FSCJ, Florida State Community College, Jacksonville. You graduate with just that degree, you're just a number of just like everybody else that has that. But when you graduate from an apprenticeship, you not only are showing that you've went through this program of apprenticeship, you're also graduating a certificate afterwards, and you also have all that time working in the industry as well. And it doesn't cost that much either, anywhere near. You're not saddled with debt.
A fraction, right?
And you're getting paid
on the job training, and it's less than $5,000 even to go through the 1-year program.
Yeah.
So
not too bad.
I told you my master's degree cost me $25,000 a semester.
I don't want to talk about my multiple CIA degrees, but Chris, you mentioned it earlier, and you made a point that's been kind of sticking out to me mentally recently. Is how, with the fact that we look at Gen Z and then Gen Alpha coming after them, becoming less and less inclined to work hard manual labor, hours and hours standing, working, and so forth. How do you think that as an industry, culinarians can be more, I don't know if the word is kind of incentivizing or enticing or, realistic and interesting to people who want to get into it or to attract more people to it?
I think the degree is part of that. So a lot of people don't want to get a degree. So that apprenticeship model, I think, is part of that. It's enticing people to go. If it's someone that doesn't want to work as hard, I don't know how to help you with that one. So that's
lazy's just lazy, right?
Yeah, that's so there's an issue there. But I think you get them out of the house maybe and push them a little bit. Maybe things will change. But I think it doesn't matter what the generation was. We were all there at certain points. Maybe the three of us are exceptions to the rule. But at the same time, every generation's had a lot of that. And, it's finding the aspect of our industry that appeals to them. And then, so talking labor shortage. So you get some of them into some of the labor force. We're never going to fill all the labor shortage we have. This was a problem pre-COVID. It's going to be a problem for the next 10 to 20 years. Technology is going to be a huge thing for us. So we just opened up a new McDonald's in the area here. There's no in front of the house anymore. You place your order either on that screen or you go through the drive-through. There are people in the back cooking your food. Still need the culinarians, by the way. You may not need the person to take your order, but you still need to make sure you have the person to actually cook the food. but I would guarantee you within the next 10 to 15 years, there's no one dropping your fries anymore. I was at the National Restaurant Association show, and there were 8 different companies selling robots to actually pull
Oh
the
yeah.
fries out of the freezer, put it into the basket, take it out of the basket, put it into the cup. And then there's even restaurants that are testing that actually have another robot that puts it into the bag for you, puts it on the conveyor, and sends it out to your car. So we're going to eventually, I think, start seeing some of those restaurants that don't need that labor. But what that does, it gives us the opportunity to steer those kids into other places, those younger culinarians into places where they might be more satisfied with it. I don't want to drop fries. You want to drop fries? I don't want to drop burger and smell like burgers at the end of the day. But I do want to plate some great food. And think about it, Chase, if you and I are at Campbell's example, if there wasn't a chef that was designing some of those Milano cookies or designing the barbecue pulled pork soup that Greg, another one of our friends that worked on that, the chef didn't design that first.
Shout out to Greg Boggs.
Just because we're not working in a fine dining restaurant doesn't mean that there's not great food. You get to concentrate for an entire day to make one amazing soup, and I do think that would appeal more to someone who's interested in not working full time on a line. I think that it's going to give them an opportunity to create delicious food, and then not only does it go to the 200 people went to your restaurant that night, it gets to go out to millions of people, and I think that that's the area that I think to concentrate on. And it's someone also has to program that robot to drop the fries too, though. So
well, you actually answered one of my thoughts and questions I was going to tack onto that. Is the Bureau of Labor Statistics actually projects chef and lead line cook jobs to rise 5.39% through 2032. So that gap fill, I believe, could be technology, and it takes away those that are like, hey, I don't want to be the fry guy. Okay, fine. But you know what? They're going to need smart minds who understand how to handle food, how to have customer service. I think you're going to be becoming a bit more of a more well-rounded culinarian. I think a lot of people in the back of the house historically like that anonymity and not having to come forward. And I know I had to push myself as the chef to put on a clean chef coat and walk around and actually face the customer and say, hey, how was everything tonight? And hope to dear God they said fantastic.
There's definitely a personality difference between front of house and back of house. And I'm right there with you, Chris. I mean, I remember 3 years ago in 2021 at the ACF National Convention, that was the first time I ever saw robot waiters, and talking to that group out there, and I was just blown away with the thought of it being on the horizon.
Yeah, and again, so I didn't even talk about that at the NRA show. There was dozens of robots for carry, and we have a couple restaurants here. So I've got one local chef here. He owns a I would call it like an upscale Mandarin Chinese type restaurant. And I moved here just after COVID, COVID lockdowns, and it was him and one server. And he was carrying all of his food out to the dining room because he couldn't find any servers. So he went and bought 2 of those robots, and now he doesn't have to run out to the dining room. The food's brought out to the table, and it keeps his overhead low too. So he had to pay a little bit up front for that machine. But however, we're losing that human touch. However, if you've been out to eat anytime recently, you've noticed that what we used to expect for service has actually gone downhill quite a bit, unfortunately, because COVID was certainly an elevator for changing people. There's a lot of people that were doing what we do for a living in restaurants. They were doing it as a job, not as a career. So those people that were doing it as a job left the industry altogether, left those of us who are passionate about it in the industry to fill in the gap, and there's no one to fill the gap.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I was living in Wisconsin during that time, and I'm in Florida myself, and
Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'm back to Florida
back.
after 30 years of living in Florida. I moved to Wisconsin, came back. But that being said, I had the same thought when COVID happened. Listen, I don't want anyone to go out of business and lose their livelihood, but there were so many operations that you went to in the market I was in that I was like, half these places probably shouldn't be in business anyhow, whether it was just kind of sanitation, cleanliness of the restaurant in general, or maybe the food was just kind of that kind of thing. And so I was kind of like, well, I think a lot of those people that just kind of thought it was going to be a moneymaker realized that it couldn't because of the situation, and they weren't passionate they weren't passionate into food. And you said it earlier, being a professional, being a chef, and hospitality. That was one of the things that I first, I think I really fell in love with first, because I started my career really in front of the house. I was with the Olive Garden at a when it was owned by uh, oh geez, wasn't Darden at the time. General Mills, I think, owned it. But anyway, I was in the front of the house making pasta. I was the pasta maker, and I
Yeah.
was running the pasta machine, and I was making all of the fresh made pasta in
I
house.
forgot they used to make pasta in house.
Yeah, everything was made in
Pretty cool.
house. The lasagna bricks, the fusilli, the linguine, the fettuccine, everything. And
Yeah, I remember there was a machine. There was a machine right out in front.
yeah, there was a machine out front that we had to throw in our semolina and our eggs.
Chase, we're dating ourselves, by the way.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that must be a little bit before my time.
It was, yeah. And so I was kind of front / back of the house. So I was prep / cook, but I was in the front. So but it was really imposed upon me because I was really kind of part of a greeting team, the hosts team, because I was up front. And so I really loved the hospitality perspective that they took on. And I know some of the most best booming operations that are going today, and we'll say it, is Chick-fil-A. They have gravitated, they've put their arms around it, they have proven that you don't have to be open 7 days a week. For one, they can hold to their own personal beliefs. Their staff gets a guaranteed day off, and whether they like saying it or not, it's my pleasure.
They're not trained that. So I have friends who own Chick-fil-A's in the area here. They're not trained that. They just pick that up as, so that's talking about personal excellence and culture. When you practice personal excellence and culture, and you are passionate and want to work somewhere, that's contagious. So that phrase you just said is not taught. It's contagious because they love working there.
Okay, I've heard it was they weren't. It was, I don't know if it's in the manual or not, but I had heard another someone tell a story that they weren't allowed to say thank you or something. It's just always it's my pleasure, because it denoted. But it's just culturally driven through corporate in a way that it's stuck and it works really well. Sorry to cut you off there, Jason.
I think there's something. No, you're totally fine. I mean, I think that you made a really interesting point and kind of brought up something that I've been talking about a bit recently. And it's the notion of hospitality being almost a bit defunct amongst culinarians, broadly speaking, in that, no one's ever, or it's very uncommon for culinarians to be taught hospitality as an actual skill. It's one of those things that, to date, or at least as far as to my knowledge, oftentimes people are just kind of expected to either be hospitable or not, and you kind of learn from role models, or you learn not as good practices from other role models. Do you think that there's an opportunity, culturally, to build more, excellence just industry-wide through teaching better hospitality?
So when you have chains that are eliminating kitchen manager positions and creating, and I'm certainly not going to name the name of the company, where they're eliminating kitchen manager positions and giving the general manager both the front of the house and back of the house management position, and then they're eliminating ordering from the server and having it done on a screen on your table. You eliminate the necessary training for hospitality. Then you just become someone who takes the food to the table. And we need to move past that. We need to go back to hospitality. We need to go back to training. When you train somebody, that's when someone gets excellence. And that's when I think, going back to culinary school and even to the apprenticeship model, but especially culinary school, most, as you know, at the CIA, Chase, when you went there, you had to work in the restaurants. You had to learn proper service, and you weren't paid labor either. You were doing it for free. You were actually paying.
I was paying to be labor.
Yeah. So you could be hot. And I think we're losing that a little bit. I think we're losing training on the job, and we're just putting warm bodies into restaurants. So, but when technology can go too far, and I think in that instance, I mentioned the first example, technology's gone too far. So how do we bring that back? You just got to do it. I hate to say it. It can't just be something. It can't just be I need to find a server to go on the floor to go bring food to somebody.
Yeah.
And the manager has to be trained in it too. So if you have managers that work their way up from that, they've never learned it, and then you just create this vicious cycle. So I don't think it's dead. I just think I think someone's got to want to bring it back.
Well, I'd like to add. I mean, I've done a little bit of homework, so I believe the ACF can really carry this torch really well. The guiding principles of the entire organization are really based on what we're talking about: the professionalism, the collaboration, that leadership, and the excellence and personal excellence. I think taking ownership is such a critical part of just being a person, but also being a chef and helping the industry as a whole move it forward and move to the future. So
you could be hospitable, professional, and change the way you dress and still be a professional. So you don't notice because I'm not standing up, but I'm wearing a short sleeve coat and I'm covered in tattoos. So 10 years ago, with the ACF, we had a campaign that was "Be That Chef," and in the picture, I was working for Campbell Soup Company at the time. My arms were folded, and they cropped the picture with the ACF to hide my tattoos because at the time it probably wasn't as acceptable, but now it is.
Yeah.
I'm not any different as a person 10 years ago for my hospitality, though, as I am today. The uniform is still a professional uniform. As you see, I've got logos. When I'm sitting up straight, it's a press jacket, but it's a professional image.
Yeah.
So I think we do adapt with the times with it, but we can't let go of those values. When you start letting go of those values, which I think, unfortunately, a number of restaurants, as you're alluding to, have let go of those values, we start to fall apart. And then it's more expensive to eat out now than it was. I literally 4 years ago, our tickets have doubled in price because of ingredients. So if you want to get people to come out, and I went to Waffle House this morning for breakfast with my men's group. It cost me $25 for waffle. I also eat a lot, so I had 3 portions of ham.
I didn't want to say, but I was probably like, you ordered the left side of the menu, chef.
I ordered whatever that giant plate of I got the waffle, I got the hash browns, I got the toast, I got the eggs, and 3 portions of ham. So,
nice.
The hash them, smash them, and bash them.
I will tell you though, the server I had at Waffle House, people joke about it, but the server I had at Waffle House was one of the most hospitable people I've ever met in my entire life. She was on it. She memorized the order, didn't have to write it down, and she also, called it. She was talking with us, engaging with us, and completely professional. So, if Waffle House can get it right, I think all the other restaurants can get it right.
Yeah, I think everyone can get it right. I'm curious to get your thoughts. I guess one of the things the ACF is very well known for, obviously, is the certifications, right? And people like myself and Chase and we all have formal culinary education, and moving forward, I think there's more to. I think that the certifications mean something more than just a couple letters on your chef coat. How do you feel about, and maybe you got thoughts around, chefs that are looking to elevate their game, maybe, and move forward in the industry and bring something more to the table?
Yeah, so one of the things that turns people off sometimes would be sometimes they think the letters that are on our jacket. It's something we wear in pride, though, and I think it has to do more. What we need to do is better educate people what those letters are, the general population, so that people don't feel that way. I think it's also every once in a while, we've got 153 chapters in the U.S. Every once in a while, you're going to run into some members that aren't the most hospitable people either, and they get their whole entire vision of our 14,000 members based off of one person.
Right.
Please, I encourage people to not do that. We have a lot of professionals, but what's important about the certifications is the certifications are a level of, as I mentioned, keep saying over and over again, a level of professionalism and excellence. Mm-hmm. It's excellence in cooking, but also management, supervision, finances, every number. Like literally one of the questions on the exam, I'm not going to tell you the answer, was what's the illumination level required for a dry storage area? That's one of the questions on the written exam for the certified executive chef.
Interesting.
So it gets into that detail. So if we educate people to understand what our certifications are, people understand it more. So one of the things I want to push forward, though, is so we have certifications for what really ends up being fine dining and full service chefs. As we keep talking about over and over again, these chain restaurants and different restaurants like that and food trucks, There's a different level of certification that I want to come up with to build around that we can help the industry more broadly. So is it a culinary manager certification, culinary administrator? I'm not sure. I do have our certification commission working on that right now. So you'll see that come out within the next year or so. But I think that that'll be a game changer. But if I don't tell people about it and we just assume that people are going to come to us, no one's going to know. That would be pointless. So I'm working also on a very big promotional campaign for us to get more recognition for the ACF and the general population of the U.S. too. When we run Team USA, which is the competition team that's in Germany right now, and we don't have the U.S. government backing us like other teams in other countries do, there's something missing there. So that we got to work on that, and that certification, I think, is the groundwork for that.
Interesting. So I'm not familiar enough with the Olympic teams and that kind of backing. Can you just give us a quick minute on what other countries are doing for their teams?
Oh gosh, France, everyone thinks of France first when they think of food. They aren't the team that wins every year though. So the Nordic teams are the ones that are doing the best. So almost about 24 countries I think are competing this year. It's every 4 years. We call it the Culinary Olympics. It's in Stuttgart, Germany this year. And it'll be switching for the next one in 4 years. But every 4 years, all these teams, they get ready. There's other competitions they get ready with, but it's a 5-member team, and they have to do a whole lot of different things that show the culinary excellence of the country. And they all compete together. But a lot of other countries, the majority of other countries, have backing from their governments. For some reason, we don't have that backing, and that's one of my missions is to figure out a way to do that properly. We now currently self-fund. So the American Culinary Federation funds it along with our sponsors. So we have a lot of sponsor dollars that go behind that. But I do think that with all the money that our country spends on everything else in other countries, I think we should spend a little bit of money on representing the cuisine of the United States.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is there any space for doing anything? I mean, I know to your point, there's always, different ways to find partnerships and represent your cuisine. Is there anything to be said about, aligning with different commodity boards and showing, what is actually grown, what makes America such a bountiful country, both from a culinary perspective, but also, what drives that culinary perspective, right? What are the fruits of our labor?
Yeah, that's a good point, and I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if we've done that in the past, but that's certainly a certain path forward, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's a strong point to look at. I mean, every state has its own, agricultural department, right? So
absolutely,
you have 50 potential.
We got the pork board, we got the U.S. beef checkoff, we've got everything.
Yeah.
So absolutely,
there's a million of those things to look at. So that's really interesting. Yeah. Well, I wish them best of luck and success when they come back, and perhaps we can get those guys to share a little bit about what they did. Any final thoughts or comments that you would love to share with us, Chef?
Anything we missed?
Anything we missed? Do you want more of my background? No.
Well, we're out of time, folks.
I just I want people to give ideas, ask questions. If you have a complaint, come with a solution. And because I certainly hear quite a few of those, but I would love to have people part of that. In the past, we've had a lot of commissions and task force and different things that we've had, but not a lot. But we have a lot more because people are willing to see us move forward. COVID certainly was a little detrimental to us, just as it was the rest of the industry. But I want more people to be involved. So if there's been something that you didn't like about the ACF in the past, I would tell you we're probably working on fixing it. And if we're not, come to the table, and we would love to have you part of the solution for us to move it forward. Back when I joined, we had almost 30,000 members. We're down to about 14,000 members. That's because we weren't looking at growth holistically, and that's one of the things we're doing now. So conservatively, I want us to 50,000 plus members within the next 5 to 7 years, and I know that we can get there. But we need to make sure that we're adding value. So as those certifications, accreditation, apprenticeship, all those different areas, I know we're going to continue to grow. But we got to get it out. And that's what I appreciate being on here with you guys, because being on podcasts, being in different areas of media gives us an opportunity to talk about it a little bit more. So
yeah, well, bringing some real benefits to the members, I think, is one of the things I heard you talking about, and bringing more value. And I was, when I came out of Johnson & Wales, the first thing you told me, go to ACF meetings and join. And I did. Yeah. And I was like, And it didn't strike me. I didn't really know and understand networking a whole lot. I was like, I got a job at a restaurant. I'm fine.
Yeah.
As you get older, you start reflecting back on it and you start realizing that there is something more to it. And I love that you are open to hearing. Also, saying just don't come and complain. Bring
Yeah.
some solutions. Have some ideas. You got an idea?
Well,
You
yeah,
know.
I'll just add one more thing in there. You have to put a little effort into it too if you want to be a member. Otherwise, you're just going to get your digital magazine that comes to you every month and every other month now. If you don't put a little effort into it, and I said 90% of my career came from being part of the ACF because I went to all the different aspects of what we have in our industry, but networking was the biggest thing. So if you go up to somebody and they don't talk to you first, find another person to go talk to. Because guess what? As you can tell from me, I like to talk. So I think all chefs do.
Yeah.
Just you got to find the right audience. So
yeah, it is.
Absolutely. Before you go, Chris, if you could name the one dish that makes you feel most comfortable, your truest comfort food, what would it be?
cassoulet. I love cassoulet. It's one of my favorite dishes.
That's a perfect dish.
Either that one or charcuterie garnies. Charcuterie garnies tattoo my arm. So sauerkraut with smoked sausages and ham and whatnot, or cassoulet. I spent a lot of time and I did some research in France for a week on cassoulet. Had 45 different versions of it, and it takes 3 days to make it, and I love sharing it with people all the time too. But then I also throw barbecue in there. I'm not sure. So
I think the point is there's a lot of food that makes you feel good, and food makes a lot of people feel good. And maybe another day we'll get back and talk about how food makes people feel good and healthy.
But I think the most important part of that question, actually more so than the food, is the people you're sharing it with. And if we don't bring that hospitality back to our industry, you're not going to be worrying about sharing it with other people. I think it's important for us to think, again, what's that holistic picture? Because without the people, it's just food. It's just sustenance. So sharing it with others is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
Well, wow, we really thank you for your time, and we're going to ask everyone just to share this episode with their friends, listen to it twice. We'll break it down into different sections, so you'll be able to capture it into smaller snippets and all that. So to all of those explore with us that we're exploring today, what it means to be a chef. Hopefully you got you thinking, scratching your brain a little bit. Again, thank you, Chef Tanner, for being a part of this, and I think that's all we have for today. Chef Chase, you want to take us out?
Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Chris, thank you so much for being here. I mean, this has been an awesome conversation. It's always great to chat with you, but I mean, especially this conversation, it feels like the ACF and the culinary industry as a whole are in a good spot. And it seems like, with you at the helm, moving in a very positive direction. So thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. And if you want to reach out to Chris, you can find him on LinkedIn, Christopher Tanner there. You can find Dan or myself. Our names, Dan Policy and Chase Openchain, of course. And please feel free to reach out to any and all of us, and we'll look forward to exploring with you in the future.
Yeah, check out your local chapter of the ACF. Maybe that's a good place to start too.
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. We'll see you in the field.